Okay. Hello, everyone. Hopefully, my voice is loud enough. Tonight, I am feeling a bit nasally. At the same time, a bit tired. I wouldn't say, I'm showing signs of, symptoms of a cold, but I am, wearing extra jackets, and just the title that approached me, it was something I just had to share. So this episode, I'll just keep it as unknown for the listeners, because I don't know if it's going to be a long episode or a short episode. I'm just going to go as much as I can and then end it off. I had a long drive today, and during the drive, I thought about how can I define or use words to define the soul. Like, what's the closest sentence that I can find that I can explain what the soul is? And first of all, by the nature of the definition of the word soul, it is beyond mind, it is beyond body, it is the mystery beyond conception. So, the sentence that I found, which I would say has some value, is the soul is the inconceivable ability of a body moving a world. Now, I thought about, the geometry of this. At first I'd written the inconceivable ability of a world moving a body, Then I realized that there can be a distinction made for those who consider the concept of God. Now, nowadays, when you say the word God, people go, oh my God. Did he just say the word God? Oh my God. But I would say that I wouldn't really, to myself, I'm such a simple person. I think it would, humorously freak out the listeners if they realize. But I do attempt questions that I feel are important. That has been a habit of mine since youth. And when it comes to solving problems, sometimes I have a sort of conqueror's mentality. What that means is that with enough effort, one may not find the answer, but they might find a clue that reinvents the question at a closer proximity to what the truth is. Anyways, what can someone mean by saying an inconceivable ability? I would say that, of course, to the religious audience, an inconceivable ability is what they call a miracle. Or the potential of a miracle. But for me, I thought about, okay, what is going on with the human experience? And, unlike my predecessors in regards to philosophically tackling the mysteries of the realm, I would say that some force animates life. This is at least a sort of common, I think many people will agree that there's some sort of force behind how the world is happening. Now, because the human being, technically sure, the body was born, but I would say the mind of human beings, it wakes up to the realm. That means it just suddenly appears. And when I think about why the brain has evolved, why human beings are at a point where they have the ability to communicate. And what does that imply? To me, it seems that aside from there being two dimensions to the world simultaneously functioning, it's as if the world moves your physical body and the inner world moves your subjective body. Now, what the subjective body is a self, and if somebody says, when does a self appear? Let's say, a person, is an athlete training for the Olympics, and suddenly, they just rest in a jacuzzi, like after a workout. It's like in that moment where the person's relaxing or releasing, they are not just releasing the tension of their physical position, they are releasing the tension of some part of the human intelligence keeping itself subjectively. So what I'm trying to say is that there seems to be, let's say that if somebody was, let's say that somebody's like, where does intelligence come from for the human body? And the answer is the world. Like, we need oxygen, we need sunlight, we need space to move in. So the intelligence of the animate human body is dependent on the world. We can say that it arises from the event of the world. It's as if, it's like, how can you be a person? Well, you need first the world to be a person. Right? Now, physically, we know that the laws of nature are involved, and for now, we're not choosing to assign consciousness to the laws of nature. Like, nobody, I've yet to see, a maverick scientist just shout, like, gravity is alive, electromagnetism is alive. Like, do you see what I'm saying? Excuse me. So, I guess how I'm approaching this is that the world is the origin of force. These forces shape the human being, which is a potential in a field of force. Now, if we consider an inner world and outer world, then there comes this idea that if the body and its intelligence depends on the outer world, could it be that when a person is being a subject to themselves, when there is an ego or a sense of self, the energy or the force behind that sense of self is from an inner world? Okay? And so what does this mean? That this is another way of saying, like, a body appeared, and this body was the physical body appeared, and this physical body was being moved by the world. And the moment the concept of soul came into place, it's another way of saying free will could notice its surroundings. So in some sense, to me, it's as if the soul is how, and in some sense, the body is moving the outer world, but here's the kicker, it is moving the outer world through an inner world. We're under this impression that it's like, let me tell you, this is the biggest issue of this modern time of ours, that we think that really it's the body, and then between, there's the, think of it this way, there's the, if somebody was to say, what is your physical, biological body sandwiched between dimension-wise, it would be as if like it is sandwiched between the whole cosmos and the sense of subjective self. Now, the thing is that if somebody was to say, what about your subjective body? What is it sandwiched in between? A response can come that the subjective body is sandwiched between an inner world and an outer body. So what I'm trying to say is that the mind is the activity between an inner world and outer body, and what I would say is the biological body is the activity of an inner self between an outer world. Now, when I say inner self, people are going to be like, Mr.Within, so there's two of me, and I'll be like, there is two of you if you consider two dimensions, as if like a person is standing in like, let's say, the ocean, and their feet are in the, like, half their bodies in the water and half their bodies above the water. Now, if somebody says, is this person in the water, the answer is like yes. And somebody says, if this person is this person out of the water, and the answer is yes. But it is not completely. You see, this is another way of saying, like, there's four corners to the cosmos of human psychology. You know, I would another way what I'm telling the listeners here in my approach to solve this issue of what is the soul. The soul is how. Let me say it this way. That oh man, there's so many things I will say at the same time. It's colliding. I'll say this, that we can take this approach where there's a known self, there's a known world, then there's an unknown world, and then there's an unknown self. Right? These are the four corners of, let's say, the consciousness and its mobilization. Now, at the same time, I mean, this is just a model, right? Let me say it this way. It's okay. I'll go back to what I was saying. If somebody says my soul moved my body, that's a suggestion of an unknown inner world leading to a known inner self. The known inner self knowing how to be in the outer world, which is supposed inevitably, like, at its edges. Right now, as I'm speaking, like, this question of what is the soul, what is behind the eyes of existence, like, it is so. You know, on some level, it's as if it's like personality-less energy, but on another level, it is the potential of psychology-less energy to, in some sense, animate as a psychology. You know, it's another way of saying that it's as if we are moving behind our eyes before we are moving in front of our eyes. And if we were to ask the question, what is inspiring the movement what is inspiring our movement in front of our eyes, the answer would go to the world. And if I was to say what is inspiring the movement behind your eyes of an awareness to a self, that is the soul, right? So I'm trying to tell you, like, it's as if two universes, one, it's as if, this might be bizarre, but just like the human brain, how there is a left, left part of the brain, right part of the brain, we have this sort of division of analytical and creative, and then there's the frontal lobe connecting it. To me, it's like, excuse me. It's such a strange situation, just conscious existence, and the dimension of experience. It's It's like we're trying to figure out the source of something that is being everything in front of our eyes and is being nothing behind our eyes. You know, you think about the human body, we call that death, right? When the human body exits its separation with the world and returns to the world, you know. But when it comes to a subject doesn't break, a subject just vanishes. You see the difference? In front of our eyes, it's like a built process. Behind our eyes is a sort of on-off switch of projection. Now, I'm not saying this is because the body, you know, stops working, so the brain turns, so the mind turns off, but it's like what I'm trying to say is that the mystery of the soul, it's as if something before anything is moving in a way where before anything has happened, when the anything that happens, it can't know. You know, it's as if like if the Big Bang Theory was a door, if the explosion of the Big Bang was a door, we don't know what is behind that door. We just know that, you know, there was a door and we got into this other side. I have really wondered about this idea of the soul to the degree where I thought, could it be that in order for there to be a temporary self, and in order for the being to be able to know it's temporary, there requires to be an eternal self. But the issue with an eternal self is that in some sense it's inseparable from a world. It's as if like in one dimension the self is separate from the world. In another dimension the self is the world. It's inseparable from the world. So it's as if like behind our eyes we are one force of being, but when the body comes, the body becomes a separate force. So in front of our eyes, world creates bodies, and then these bodies look at the world and begin having inner worlds develop. Now, what moves in the inner world? Like consciousness is so bizarre. It is, to me, the mystery of consciousness is as fascinating as like aliens landing on Earth. To me, it's as if it's like we are not sure we are human, but because all that we see is human, we think we are human. But when we wonder what is aware of the thought that it is being human, that thought is not human. Now the challenge is, what does the human being do when it discovers a dehumanized intelligence being present in the world that it is existing in? What the human being can do is it goes to a crossroad of assumption or shaping, where the human being has the choice of saying it's like one route, it's shapeless. It's as if that dehumanized intelligence doesn't mean it's alien, doesn't mean it's something robotic, it just means it is nothing. Like nothing that is alive. Somebody could say everything is alive and call that God, but it's like Spinoza did that. But somebody can say nothing is alive and call it in some sense not God, but call it nothing. When I say call it nothing, not to call it nothing, to call it nothing. That means silence is like the name of the eternal, is the sound of the eternal. And you know, guys, honestly, I don't know who listens to these talks anymore. I think, I've kept the 1 hour format to such a degree nobody will. Who knows? Imagine the sun cast a shadow on itself. To realize it never could. If prior to consciousness, world was moving body, then consciousness appeared, a body is moving in a world, changing the world into perceiving the world. Perception is another way of saying you are moving the world non-physically. Because really we take physics as such firm certainty, not realizing that the context of the world is unknown. You know, when I think about the beginning of my life until now, and I think about all the ways I've looked at the earth, and I've looked at what is happening on the earth, and where it started from, I will tell you I have come to the conclusion that the mind knows it is the body, but doesn't know doesn't know what is being it. There's an additional dimension. It's as if pure materialism was a blindfold, not considerate of the equivalency of importance of the opposite. Dear listeners, is it really far-fetched what I'm saying, that this whole time we have considered a material sense of self, but the thoughts of ourself are not material, subjects are not objects, they are perceivable. It's as if light is casting a spell on matter, and matter is like, yo, am I made of the light, just to realize that really there is no storyline. This is the biggest fear of the human species, and it is also the chains that shackle it to the temporary, you know, because it's as if, like, imagine a multidimensional being tortured. This is like a bizarre thing I'm saying, but Alan once made a point of it, so I'm gonna talk about it as well. It's like the torture of a multidimensional being, or the suffering of a multidimensional being, is to not realize it is multidimensional. The suffering of an enlightened being is not to realize it's enlightened, and the suffering of an immaterial being is to not realize that it is not made of matter. Dear listeners, our minds are acting as space. This whole time we have thought we're just a body moving in the world. The world is being the mind. And so there is a beauty, perhaps, in a species discovering its multidimensional birthright, you know. There are some beings, I will tell you now, who I would truly say these are old souls in accordance to traditional spiritual nomenclature. That the old souls of now are already acting as collective beings. It's hilarious. It's as if, like, in the future, there is a sort of inconceivable unity to all phenomena being prior to its, like, classification. And so it's as if those people who tap into the future, they realize the future knows its shapeless presence, regardless of the shape of its personality. Behind the eyes of existence is an unknown experiencer. And people are like, Mr.Within, how can I be sure? And I would say, just ask yourself, who are you? If you honestly reach a point you don't know, then you'll realize that awareness doesn't need a condition to be. Awareness is, and the conditions are found within it to then take shape. It's as if, like, you know, a field of intelligence just needed, you know, this might sound bizarre, but one can say the soul is not in the body. The soul is where the body is happening. how many human beings will be born? And how many of these human beings will wonder about what it is that has been born? Something I know is that there's a hypocritical process going on in I would say, the academic dimension. This hypocritical process is in some sense trying to have certainty in the past and then creating future curriculum. It is impossible. The past cannot be the teacher of the future, it is the other way around. All that the past can do is in some sense accumulate, and it's like a general increasing, like his army and his forces, and this general, imagine it back in the day, ancient history, this general has expanded his army, and the general knows that the kingdom is under siege. What the general does is in some sense immediately have a strong vision of purpose. This strong vision of purpose is shared with the others. Those who perceive this strong vision of purpose, they are born in an inner realm of loyalty. This loyalty is not conditional. It is the result of the future. You know what it is? It's as if this might sound bizarre, but there are promises made by God in holy books. There are promises made in stories of chaos by, let's say, the archetype of the fallen angel. And I would say there is another force. There is something aside from God, aside from order and chaos. I would say there's something aside from God and let's say the fallen angel. That force is the future, and the future has an ability that conceptual promise has. The future doesn't even have this is the bizarre thing, something which I am just speaking of it as a philosopher, something where I'm just wondering about. But to me, there's so many people who believe in life, and because they believe in life, they believe in time, and when you wonder about the future of life, that becomes your afterlife. Now, the issue with the afterlife is that the life definitioning is gone. And so, it's another way of saying, what would the afterlife of an inconceivable, unconditional, worldly, vast force be? It's as if somebody was wait a minute, I'm made of energy. Energy can't be created or destroyed. Then who is dying? And so the idea is what is death is how a mysterious viewer names a chunk of its perception and zooms in on that. I would say there are not human beings on a planet. There are unknown users in a singular physical vehicle, and each user has access to a sort of inner abstract private sector of perception. I will tell you, there's people think that memories, oh man, there's so much to say in this episode. My brother asked me recently about how can one get rid of guilt. And just as a philosophical question. And I told him that it's the moment you stop identifying with memory. Now, the issue is that the moment you stop identifying with memory, you are not a self. So technically, the selfless cannot have guilt. But the issue is that the human intelligence requires proper administration in front of its eyes and behind its eyes. And the challenge of trying to build an advanced civilization, I'll tell you, when it comes to my life, I have, for now, no greater purpose. I see no greater purpose in this physical realm than to attempt to have a species, march towards its advanced civilization, to have a species roar like a lion because it is born to do so. You know, civilizations advance not because a species got lucky. Civilizations advance because the eternal view is in sight. When human beings do not fear death, they will not fear eternity. When they do not fear eternity, they instantly transcend immortality. The moment they transcend immortality, all conceivable possibilities of reality will in some sense will in some sense find themselves floating in, I would say, primordial emptiness. That emptiness there was a time I said in these talks, I'm trying to remember, I think it was in 2014 or 15. It was like after, I would say, maybe 400 episodes I'd give it. And I remember I was in UK, Birmingham, and I had this small accommodation room. And in that room, for a second, I felt I wasn't gonna die. I felt I was gonna exit. That means in 2015, I felt I had finished my existence. And in my inner realms I had. In my outer realms, the body was still here. Behind my eyes, I am not a subject. Because if I was a subject, I'll be honest, I couldn't speak freely. This is the issue of mindhood. People identify with the content of their perception rather than wondering how the whole perception is standing in the moment. Imagine the greatest battle in the cosmos was taking place, and we're listening. Imagine the marching. Again, imagine you're a commander of this greatest battle in the cosmos taking place. Now, you as a commander are just staring at the armies of time. And it's like when potential actualizes, the seeds of victory sprout. For me, I will tell you, this is a reason where I think I'm not actually a very pleasant person to be around. Because to me, the chaos of reality I see is so intense, and it is so elusively, it's as if there is such a box on the head of our species that it's as if the tolerance for its inability to recognize its limitation, it's as if, like, I can totally see why gods got angry at their creations, because a better way was possible. You see, I remember in this is kind of a tangent, but I'll share it. I remember that I was wondering about the Islamic holy book, and I opened that book, and there was a passage that said there were those before you, and they did not listen to God's words, and then they perished. You know. And I don't remember the exact words, but it was like there was also this other passage I had read where it said God doesn't need people to go talk about it, you know, because God is so able that if God wanted, you know, preachers to go and tell everybody God is here, God would have instantly created people with already knowing, right? So in some sense, the test of human life is not the test of what is the best case scenario in the religious thought. It is more like the performance of man beyond the arena of intellect and beyond the arena of mastery and submission, eventually the being that has been born in the world begins to realize that the mysteries of the self are rooted in the mysteries of the world. The mysteries of the world become way more macrocosmic. So it's as if when I wonder about my micro self, sure, I'm just some podcaster on his balcony. But if I wonder about my macrocosmic self, I am the unknown intentions of a universal sector to realize that in order to be the advanced, a force must be found that there are no resistance to it. I don't know how to tell you, but it's like, to me, the greatest advancement, it's like what happens to a civilization that is sped up and endlessly updating. Like a civilization accelerating at the speed of light eventually becomes an invisible victory. Imagine this whole time there has been, like, extra dimensional beings, and they've been moving faster than the speed of light. And this whole time, it's as if it's not that metaphysics was hocus pocus, it was that mankind's sight was too slow, to see the greater game being played. It took me a while to realize that the serious strategic victory is not more valuable than the playful, serene, stumbling into paradise. You see, when it comes to the inner realms, every person right now listening to me, you are an elemental projection which is reacting to its greatest reception of the realm. So it's like an antenna receiving to the best of its ability, and its psychology is the greatest reaction of, again, the unknown inner viewer to the known landscapes, or you can say the abstract forests of the mind. Do you see? It's as if the wonder for the greatness of something saves it. And I will tell you, when I see a species that loathes itself, or a species that feels it has made so many mistakes it can't recover, I just see a lazy species. There's many incredible and disciplined people on this planet, but the species is lazy. The species has allowed an emotional state of misery and suffering to become a box on its head that if it took it off, it would see that the realm is just potential actualization. That's it. The mind is here to point to where attention can go. When attention gets to that point, as the poet Rumi says, wherever you are, be the soul of that. Be the soul of the moment. If you consider the soul inconceivable, and if you consider the edge of the world inconceivable, and if you consider the moment inconceivable, then in some sense conception has finally become content with its own hollowness. You see, on this planet, you don't need to just have an ability of experiencing objects in some sense fading. You in some sense must have an ability to see subjects fading, but also the ability to see them rise. Do you know, I have in some sense had, like, let's say, went about my day and come home at night and slept, and suddenly had a dream where I was moving in the dream, and woke up the next day being like, what bizarre mystery is this, that my body is on the bed just sleeping, but my mind created a body, created a world, and a dream body in that dream world had led to an emotion. What this means is that Imagination emotionally influences us as if it was reality. That means, let's say, somebody says, let's say somebody sees like, okay, let's say the first person in the history of soccer and football, in the history of football, that saw like the first person who ever in human history who did a bicycle kick. Now imagine you're a kid listening to the radio to that soccer game, and you're someone there watching the soccer game. The person who watches the person do the bicycle kick, oh my god, real, the person's emotional, surprised, the whole audience members were like, what did that guy just do? Like everybody was just shocked and surprised, you know? And then that person who hears the bicycle kick on the radio is going to visualize it and also get a similar emotional reaction. This means emotionally we are influenced by two types of worlds, but when it comes to physically, we're influenced by one type of world for now. And I'm trying to simplify it because let me tell you, I am a type of I would say I'm one of those speakers in history where I have this prediction that the religious communities, may have to, deal with the urge. Here's the thing, I am trying to shake the linguistic simulation so the species can realize that beyond how the attention has moved, there is greater piloting. Any consciousness that right now is in the human framework, and you can understand what I'm saying, you are a great pilot in the cosmos. Somebody could show me a young child, and somebody, let's say an intellectual, comes to that young child and says, look at this young child, it doesn't have intelligence, it doesn't have intellect, it doesn't know what's going on, it doesn't care about politics, this newborn baby doesn't care about voting. But imagine from another level, instead of judging the present, you wonder about the potential of the past. It's as if our past is where the probabilities to our present arise. But these probabilities arise, so it's as if like there's a present physical biological entity in any situation. This physical biological entity, it's as if the attention pilots to the past, and then the past information is accumulated alongside the present, then a move towards the future comes. Because really in life, you cannot avoid dimensions. I have realized this both in the physical realms and in the inner and outer. Do you know? It's as if, what it was when I look at myself, I'm like, oh my god, I took the concept of my own mortality too seriously when I was young, because it made me wonder about what would be the most efficient way that human beings can function in the world. That answer exists, we just haven't found it. Right now, there could be a way all human beings could be living that could just instantly or very quickly lead to an advanced life. To me, the word advancement is like the other side of I shouldn't say the other side, it's like another name for divinity. If I see, if when somebody sees a civilization advancing, to me that's equivalent to like an angel coming down from the clouds, like an epic movie scene, Really what it is, the human species is alone, and deep down it has the desperation for otherworldly allegiancehood. This otherworldly allegiancehood is just the game of life. Do you know that means this might be bizarre for me to say, but the smartest way to look at life is to Figure out who is looking. This is the secret of spirituality. The moment you understand this, the word spirituality means nothing. You have been introduced to a cosmic landscape where you have, for a limited time as a biological entity, an ability to solve the problems of the realm. Like, take that in. Right, when I see like rappers, singing about like the violence in the street, I am like, okay, that's great, but what about the cosmic, the existential situation? What about life as if like, why are gangsters acting tough when so many people die every day and so many people are born every day? Who are we acting in front of? A changing world. It's as if the person looked at the world and was like, I'm enlightened, bro, you can't like do anything to me, and the world was like, I don't care. And in reality, I'm trying to say that we fear the unknown, and because we fear the unknown, we choose our certainty and our comfort zone, and that is an issue. I found myself, I would just say, as the observer of my own psychology, that there's many situations that my attention cannot fit the status quo because the speed of change is different. That means it's as if when somebody talks really fast, you cannot get bored, actually. And the person talking can never get bored either, because it's just a higher speed of function. But when somebody talks slow, it's like in the pauses in between, imagination is speaking. The imagination of the listener. To know that what is a thought is being watched unknowingly as the whole moment. For me, I would say I'm a religious person in the sense that I have made cosmic requests. There's been days where I will tell you I have prayed for, imagine like you pray for someone who you care about, like who's alive. And now imagine praying for the unborn. Praying so that in the astral, or I would say in Antarloka, in the subtler dimensions, it's as if the halls of the advanced civilization, the doors of the advanced civilization, how would I tell you, it's as if like, on some level, these talks of mine, some guy just, some evolutionary, it's like after 4.5 billion years, an animal species could talk, but I am telling you, behind my eyes, I will tell you, this cosmos doesn't have an agenda. What this cosmos has is in some sense a challenge. To me, beyond good and evil, that's what you find. You find a challenge, which is another way of saying there is something new. What are you going to do about it? Whoever you are listening, whatever state of mind you're in, let's say you're piloting through life turbulently or smoothly. To me, this is my whole psychological analysis. Like, I don't believe in the concepts of like depression, like the suffering, like that shit doesn't make sense to me. To me, it's like you're an intelligence where the free will is piloting itself, and the free will chooses, like an eagle that lands on a branch that was flying in the sky before. Like that eagle chooses where it lands. There's moments where, of course, a person naturally, let's say, there's some sort of emotion, upset emotion that comes, but eventually the question, the context of the causality of the moment is questioned. This is being done every moment. I would go as far as to say that moment you blink, the brain's like, where'd the world go? And then instantly there's a reset. The mystery of our intelligence deserves the full effort of everything, now I said prayers, but sometimes it's also like my prayers, I feel they're commands. There was a time where in my inner realms I felt like this presence had entered my space, like this sort of, it's as if I had suddenly found some sort of pattern in the room of my mind that wasn't from my mind. And I remember I just shouted at the moment, anything that's around me, just walk towards the advanced civilization. There is, in the physical realm, no greater purpose. In the inner realm, the purpose of reality is in some sense to for what it's as if those advanced human beings in the future that will be privileged to live in the advanced civilization, it's as if then the inner work of the advanced civilization maxes out. It's as if in the outer realms we achieved victory. Now the victory of the inner realms is left, but the victory of the outer realms is like a self-realizing itself, it realizing its origin, and then the victory of the inner realms is the world realizing its origin. And I would say for the soul, the victory of the soul is to remember it was never in a war. The game of what meaning is telling us to do in regards to what we see is like, that's the issue. Do you know the issue is that the species is assuming too quickly that it can consider what it sees as true. Can you imagine there was a magician that just couldn't be atheist because he knew optical illusions could not be trusted? You know, sometimes I feel that the future is going to become so intelligent that all the things that we think we messed up, the future would solve. I feel that a generation will come. Let's call this the diamond generation. In the future, the diamond generation will be that generation of human beings that in some sense solved pretty much all the problems in the outer realms, like close to like just in their lifespan. Do you know? So imagine in 100 years in the future, that 100 years, if all the problems that we think we messed up and we can never fix and stuff, they will fix. The diamond generation, do you know? A part of me feels like I've been there. But I'll tell you, like, the mind, of course, is a simulation. The simulation keeps resetting, and as it resets, there's the unknown interviewer feels that free will can choose from all the inner world possibilities. Imagine like there was this guru and there was this disciple, and the disciple was like master, like guru, enlightened guru, you know. The disciple was like, enlightened guru, I have learned all your final teaching, what do I do now? And the teacher looks at the student, like the guru looks at the student, it's like, great, you've learned everything I've told you, good, now go explore. You know, to me, educational systems on this planet should not allow anyone to graduate unless they have made a discovery, something new added to the system, and then you deserve what you gained. It's as if make history, then graduate. That should be the, future academic system. To me, people, when they think of intellectuals, it's like some dude with glasses, like sitting at a table writing, But I am telling you, the true intellectuals are like fearless warriors that know the value of their own destiny. We are living at a time where the species is transitioning from the dynamic where the world was limited to nothing, to the singularity, and to duality. Now we're reaching a time where we're like, if the singularity and the duality are codependent, and if this codependence is in the void, that means the singularity and duality both are dualistic, depend on the void. So where is the void? And this is where the past, in some sense, dissolves itself, and the future starts dancing in your mind. And when I say the future starts dancing, it's as if the person thought, for example, a good date was to go at a restaurant. Like, it's as if the mind begins dancing with the future, and a good date would be like on a space station the first night. So what I'm trying to tell you, it's like what I'm telling you, when the mind dances with the future, it has released its fear of the past and has understood that the purpose of life is not just to live it, but it's to see how far the eyes of our species can open. Excuse me. There's a poem by Rudyard Kipling. I recommend everybody to read this, or hang it on their refrigerator so their children see it. Their young children. To me, a smart parent, this is something that maybe I'll just say in case there's parents listening. This is what I would think a smart parent would be, is that they get important books. There's some books that possess, and there's some books that liberate. So let's say the parents, based on their own discretion, find books that they feel it will liberate their child, and they don't tell the child to read it. They just put the book on the table, like open, like halfway open or something, right? And eventually, it's as if in the environment, this is what I think will really, get the engines of an advanced civilization going, is that the future generations get paid to solve existential problems. People on the planet all want to make money, but the issue is that how are they making money? And then, because we want freedom, people are trying different things. It's like we're saying, sure, so many different artists can draw whatever they like, but at the same time, it's as if we need one picture for the species to unite on. To me, advanced parenting, and I'm not a parent, but this is just thoughts I've had online, is to allow the great leaders of humanity to arise. We are all pilots, piloting our plane of existence. When I am speaking, it's like, the end of the night where I'm like, okay, the inner realms can dance before I, go back to the void and sleep. The mind's life is, the freedom for your mind is actually novelty, and that's the greatest freedom of the mind, the ability to experience the new endlessly. When I say the new, not a conditional novelty, a novelty where the person realizes there is no self to have a past. There is no self in a present where the world is being the world. And there is only a self in the future, which is capable. It's as if in the future, it's, to be honest, manifestation is like what being is doing for a little while. What existence is doing. Existence is being. Experience is doing. When the doing stops, when the manifestation stops. That is when being no longer is being. I feel that there's no such thing as death, that we get pulled out of our individual consciousness. And if we are attached to the story of the world, you won't be pulled out of your inner realm. It's as if, like, think of it this way, like a violinist after a great symphony and the violinist puts down the violin, like the violin stick, but doesn't put down the violin, or puts down the violin and doesn't put down the violin stick. It's as if, why is it holding on to it? Life must be lived in a way where in every moment freedom is there, because in every moment there can be absence appearing. I mean, we don't freak out about sleep, but death is a different situation. Death is like an exit. To me, I feel if a person pays closely to how their karma is happening, they will realize it's not just based on what they do, it's also based on how they take in what they see being done. And if a person realizes that in one lifetime, what do temporary creatures deserve? There was a time, guys, where I got so upset that I had ever entertained the concept of an enemy. It's as if like an advanced civilization belongs to all those hearts that have killed. The soul is pretty much how the inconceivable is conceiving itself. Now, I would say the clue I have is that this soul and God is a field, is a conscious field. It's like space is alive, and matter is in space, and and a part of the matter in the space thinks it's alive just because of the matter. The body is alive materialistically, but where your sense of self knows where the body is subjective. It's as if really it is true that we have bodies, but we're starting as minds. It's like Friedrich Nietzsche, this philosopher, saying if a tree falls in a forest, and nobody hears it, the tree falls. So it's the same thing. Where the certainty that we are physical entities is coming from is actually from a mental position. Because without the mental position, the objective position doesn't have meaning. Without consciousness, memories cannot, in some sense, like chemicals, react with the present perceptions. There is a glow in the eyes of the human species. This glow is not the glow of like a species chosen like Neo in the Matrix. It's just that with great vision comes great effort. That's it. It's as if you're on stage on a material, on an elemental, on a stage made of the periodic table for a little while. And it's as if, what is the best strategy? If the species can in the most playful and benevolent and compassionate way advance in ways where both chaos and order. To me, my argument is let's say all the chaotic beings in the world, all the ordered beings in the world. It's like, why not build an advanced civilization, then chaos and order can fight? Honestly, the concept of the advanced civilization is probably like a universal idea where I think everybody would agree. Everybody would agree for an advanced civilization. And when I say advanced civilization, I'm not talking about like robotic possession of nature. I am talking about the best case scenario possible for this species, and that is the task of the soul. It's as if what is the meaning of life for an explorer? And it's the same, that the soul is in some sense how some sort of ability of existing as the whole moment projects movement in it. It's hilarious. When I look at atheism and theism, it's as if on one level God is in the eyes of man, and in another level man is in the eyes of God. It's either the inconceivable being the cause to the effect, or the conceivable being the cause to the elements and matter, and the Vedas these yogis were so ahead of their time, where they said Purusha and Prakriti are simultaneous. That means when it comes to realizing how you're a body, how you're a mind, it's impossible unless you see both of them simultaneously as true. Right now in 2022, it's as if somebody sees one side of it as true and they think the whole thing's true. But it's actually, you have to see emptiness and fullness side by side, and this applies to the psychology of humankind. The soul becomes how unknown moved the known to realize the unknown moved the known. What I'm trying to say is that an advanced human being cannot die. It's just impossible. It's like as if those who live for life live for life. It's another way of saying that before you die, you became the world, and death could not destroy the world. Do you see? It's as if you are free. If there is trust in your causality, if a person doesn't trust the deep causality that filters their mind and psychology, if you don't trust how being is being, then you cannot do. But if you trust how being is being, all is done. Trust the world you're in once. Why? Because we're in it. It's as if like a king sat on his throne of the kingdom and felt he was the whole kingdom. And so the human species stands as a conscious viewer of an infinite cosmos. The kingdom of the infinite unknown belongs to the mystery that moves man's knowledge. What the Logos is an attempt to give a voice that eventually will be realized is the voice of the world. That means it's as if like when universes reset, it's as if the world is speaking to itself. To me, I have a shamanic vision that life arises, and there has been moments where I have looked at people's behavior and everything made sense until suddenly I notice that it's like deep down behind the person's eyes, if there isn't contentment with the unknown due to the desire of attachment, possession becomes the life. It's as if there's some people who are possessing life, and there are some people who are being alive. Those who are being alive, it's as if they remember nature's freedom before it's like nature. How can I tell you? It's as if like a manifestation was, the void's way of letting you see something. I have wondered how far a person should look. There has been times where I have felt that too much wonder for truth can lead to sin. And also too much wonder for truth can lead to liberation. It's as if, what is the initial intent behind the presence of the world? Freedom after our individual success is a collective success. Imagine whoever you are listening to me, imagine right now you were the most advanced version of yourself. So after you have attained advancement, the species is left. After the species has advanced, the planet. After the planet, the galactic sector. After the galactic sector, the universal entrance into being. I don't know how this will happen, but some part of me feels like the voice has found this microphone. I think in the next 150 years, we are going to see a sort of like bubbles boiling at the end, at the bottom of a kettle, level of revolutionization in people's perceptions. The era of the multidimensional being has come, the era of the advanced communicator. There's no longer smart or stupid people. You know, there's just beings that are being at different levels of advancement of a universal sector, because everybody occupies a sort of space in the space, like in the world. Because you're a part, because you exist in space, you are like a how can I tell you, a unique explorer of a world you can only see. Behind the eyes of existence, the soul is the inconceivable ability of a body moving the world. It's as if the world did its thing and we're here, now we do our thing, and the world projects in our inner realms and it exists there. It's like the world passes us on and we pass on the world. It's literally a creation game. This is really what the mind is doing. The world is creating the body is creating the world. The mind is a world engine. It's a world builder. So when somebody says, I'm not a creative person, I don't have imagination, there are worlds changing behind your eyes. Pay attention, you will see what no one else sees. He started this movement in America called American Transcendentalism, and his disciple was Henry David Thoreau. And pretty much these guys had this view that your soul is your connection to God and the ultimate truth, and they would just go in nature and they would in some sense get acquainted with the presence and decency of their own soul to realize that behind the human eyes is actually like a transparent dimension of being. It's as if behind our eyes there is a tunnel to the Creator, but that tunnel to the Creator surpasses light and darkness. Hence the word inconceivable. I honor the inconceivable because it is the destiny of conception. You know, we shouldn't fear death because actually we were unknown first. It's as if we didn't exist first before we existed. So we were technically born as non-existence before we were born in existence. So it's as if non-existence is a return to what we were before we existed. Do you see? This is the transcendentalist approach. Now, let's say back to Ralph Waldo Emerson saying like, the soul is your connection to God. I would say the soul is an ability for the inconceivable to recognize itself. And based on this recognition, what can the body do? You either move in the world or you move worlds. You know? There has been situations where in my mind, in my inner realms, I saw myself saying something, doing something, and I'm like, man, that's so smooth. And then in the outer realms, I did it and it went completely different. In the inner realms, it's easy to find a paradise. In the outer realms, it is an incredible challenge to build it. All those kids on the planet who like to solve Rubik's Cubes throw away that puzzle. It's like the big greatest puzzle is in front of their eyes and it's endless. The sky's edge. Or at least one edge of the sky cannot be found. It's like the scientist was like, alright, let's index the whole cosmos to become certain of our generalized truths. And then suddenly there came this idea that it's too dark to see the edge of the cosmos, and that's when the species wakes up to its self-simulation game. Really, it's just knowledge that is aligned with physical cause and effect, and then a sort of knowledge that is aligned to an inner cause and effect. Now, if you go to the source of the cause, that's the same Ramana Maharshi mysticism. Pretty much this dude was like, somebody was like, hey, Ramana Maharshi, how can I get enlightened? And he's like, answer this question, who am I? And you'll see that the eye, it's as if what you see outside is in your eyes, and your biological eyes are in your mind, which is being the whole world. The only way to really build an advanced civilization is to have it be advanced from the beginning. Therefore, in the inner realms, any human being that has wondered about the most advanced state of being, the songs of the advanced civilization should be heard. Whoever you are, help the species broaden its horizon. It's like there's so many better ways of like the whole system that can happen. I wish to see that day, right, where like this was a sort of global announcement and all schools had to give their children, in the school an assignment, like let's say, let's say before children could, I don't know how to say it, but pretty much schools give the children an assignment where they're like, wonder about how we can build the most advanced world scenario. And I will tell you, give this assignment to kids of all ages, any human being, you will be fascinated how many types of worlds are behind our eyes and none of us know about it because we haven't shared it. The era of advanced communication means, for the first time, a sort of fearlessness of what a species deserves in the future has come to, in some sense, liberated from how the past is defining the present. The world moved the body moved the world and body moved simultaneously, and eventually the witness of the simultaneity of all dimensions of reality. It's like, I don't want to say that truth has been here all along, but I want to say that those who find their soul have liberated a lost world. It's like Paradise's paradise was inconceivable freedom, a freedom of entering conceivable dimensions and being in conceivable dimensions at any time or any place. As every human being goes within and opens that gift, your presence will become your teacher, and when your personality knows how to be present, what I mean by that is that when you realize that simplicity is the liberation of complex suffering. is freedom. There's no complex denial. There's no, you know what it is? It's kind of like, it's like the simple is perfect because it is too simple to be imperfect. You know? It's another way of saying when the human being, when the self in the world trusts the world can start to trust the self. That means first you start off in a world, then you close your eyes and you realize you have become the world. And then you open your eyes while your inner world is being still active. Person is listening, I'd be like, it's as if an advanced civilization is what the creator deserves from its creation, its most advanced state of being. You know, so many religious people entertain that life is a test by God, like Abrahamic religions. And it's as if a test for what? A test for submission? A test for mastery? A test for contentment or advancement? And I would say life is a test you're not its student. What I'm trying to say is that when the self is freed from the world, it is no longer bound by how self saw it. In the Vedas, there's the clue, the seer of the seen is unseen. Let me just read some Vedic quotes right now. Let's see the Upanishads quotes. Quote time. So I'm just going to read some quotes that are from different Upanishads. This will give a sense to people of like the Vedic, mystical culture. Consciousness is Brahman. Consciousness is ultimate reality. I am Brahman. Brihadaram Yaka Upanishad. Tattvam Asi. That thou art, you are Brahman. Chandogya Upanishad. The self is Brahman. Mandukya Upanishad. Your real self is the silence of the universe. In the beginning, my dear, this universe was being sought alone, one only without a second. This is Chandogya Upanishad. Taittiriya Upanishad says Brahman is reality, knowledge, and infinity. Chandogya Upanishad says all is that we see in the world is Brahman. Brahman means ultimate reality. Here's a quote that says Brahman, that is immediate and direct, the self that is within all. You cannot see that which is the seer of seeing. You cannot hear that which is the hearer of hearing. that which is the thinker of thought. You cannot know that which is the knower of knowledge. This is yourself that is within all, everything else but this, with it is spelled with a capital T here, is perishable. This is from the, what was it called? Brand. Like this is from the Brihadaran Yakal Upanishad. In the Upanishads, I think this is the Upanishads, no, sorry, this is Swami Vivekananda, just this where he liberated yogi. He says, when the soul has realized that everything is full of the Lord of Brahman, it will not care whether it goes to heaven or hell or anywhere else, whether it be born again on this earth or in heaven. These things have ceased to have any meaning to that soul, because every place is the same. Every place is the temple of the Lord. Every place has become holy, and the presence of the Lord is all that it sees in heaven or hell or anywhere else. Neither good nor bad, neither life nor death. Only the one infinite Brahman exists. According to the Vedanta, when a man has arrived at the perception, he has become free, and he is the only man who is fit to live in this world. Others are not. The worst punishment, according to the Vedas, is coming back to earth, having another chance in this world. Here is the greatest of all altars, the living, conscious human body, and to worship at this altar is far higher than the worship of any dead symbols. Swami Vivekananda said this. From the Chandogya Upanishad, it says, just as, my dear, by one clod of clay all that is made of clay is known, the modification being only a name arising from speech, while the truth is that all is clay. Just as, my dear, by one nugget of gold all that is made of gold is known, the modification being only a name arising from speech, while the truth is that all is gold. While the truth is that all is gold. Chandogya Upanishad. Shankaracharya, this enlightened dude, says, he's defining the Atman. He says the word derived from the root ap, ad, or ad may mean respectively to obtain or pervade, to eat or enjoy, or to move without ceasing. The term Atman indicates the, in quotations, supreme reality, omniscient, all-powerful, free from all phenomenal characteristics such as hunger and thirst, eternal, pure, illumined, free, unborn, undecaying, deathless, immortal, fearless, and non-dual. That means the supreme reality is free from all the psychological, all the conditions of the world where our psychology can move in. It's as if a freedom that had nothing to do with us, and it has been being here this whole time. This freedom is the freedom of space prior to anything matter can think or see. It's as if there is a life to the world that we are breathing at. There is a hidden honor. That is found from within for all cosmic activity. I'm going to end the quote tunnel and say this. I think the best approach for people who, like, they've been drawn to the concepts of spirituality, the best way to contact your real self or your spirit, or let's say, this is my view of how you should go about your inquiry into the soul. You need to find a moment to sit still and silent for around 10 minutes, just wherever you are, sit on the ground, whatever. And in that 10 minutes, just like you are walking in a museum, but instead imagine all the stuff on the museum was a treadmill passing you by. So I was on a treadmill passing you by. What I'm trying to say is that just like on a museum, you don't touch what you see. I want you forget your past and all your opinions, and for one moment in those 10 minutes, just watch how you are being, how it's all happening, and that will be your first experience with your soul. You don't need drugs, you don't need need anything, you just need 10 minutes of silence and stillness to care to look at your own eyes again, prior to any conception, prior to any past providing a context. I am telling you, wonder about truth as a free being, and then you will see all as being free. It's not just words, it's the nature of energy. The eternal laughter can be heard, at this is for poetry's sake I'm saying, but the eternal laughter can be heard, at the funerals of the temporary. What I mean by this is that the body, it requires to be returned to the earth. The mind requires to, in some sense, realize it as being the world. And that's the mind's freedom. You don't escape a simulation, you become the simulation and you were never in it. Which is another way of saying, when the world becomes conscious of itself, no self has ever been chained, no self. It's as if the person's, one person turned to another person and they're like, yo man, I'm enlightened, how about you? And that person was like, buddy, the world is enlightened, time to be on. The potential of being is beyond thought. Whoever you are, activated for yourself in this lifetime. Much blessings. Namaste. The future generations deserve the greatest. An advanced civilization is the future's birthright. That's one lifetime to see how far a species could rise.